Right, welcome to the Able to Care podcast. I can't remember how many episodes we are in, but it's a little bit different this week or this month. So I've got a very special guest with me today. So we're doing a bit more of an interview style kind of form podcast rather than the usual chats that I have. And joining me today is a gentleman, Mark Williams. So thank you very much for joining me, Mark.
Are you okay?
Yeah, doing good. Thank you very much. Doing good. So a little bit about Mark to get us started. So Mark is a keynote speaker and author of numerous books and an international campaigner. He founded International Father's Mental Health Day and the How Are You Dad campaigns. And Mark has done a lot of speaking on television and radio stations around the world and co-authors on articles around fathers' mental health. That's your definite passion, isn't it, around that area and perinatal mental health and things like that. He actually got named British Citizen Award he got for this year, 2023. So I'd love to hear a bit more about that. But the reason we've got Mark on today is because we're going to be talking about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So Mark actually got diagnosed with ADHD in 2013 at the age of 40, which is quite late for a diagnosis for most. I'm sure you've lived with it all of your life and never quite knew what was going on there. So he's here to talk about that. He's a research champion with the Cardiff University for ADHD. So I believe you do a lot of work with them around kind of webinars and greater understanding around that as well. So thank you so much for joining. I'll better introduce myself as well. Obviously, for those of you who haven't seen the podcast before, my name's Andy Baker. I'm the lead trainer and managing director of Able Training Support Limited. Author as well, so get there as it will come in this year. And I teach around subjects like ADHD and things like that. And Mark and I met a few years ago now. It's not
a few years
around kind of doing training around that particular subject. So it's great to have you on, Mark. Thank you very much for joining.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you. It's great.
And so I sent over some questions to Mark to kind of sort of go through a few bits and pieces. But so obviously for many people out there who may be watching or listening to this, obviously ADHD is one of the most commonly made diagnoses around children, particularly around behavioural challenges or emotional difficulties and stuff. I think it's commonly most diagnosed neurodiverse condition out there. I think there's still an awful lot of stigma around ADHD and huge misunderstandings about it, particularly. And you still do hear used to call it naughty kids back in my day. and I think there is a lot of crossover with other neurodivergent conditions and other mental health issues as well that sometimes kind of all blend together a little bit with the ADHD as well, don't they? So I think we'll just go through the few questions that I kind of asked you, Mark, and we'll sort of see where it goes, if that's all right.
Yeah, no, it's fab. It's great.
Okay, so would you want to start off, obviously, late in life as far as 40 years old and getting a diagnosis? But I'm assuming, well, as you said there, baby, this is something you've lived with throughout your life, but never got picked up on before. So tell me about the journey that you went through to get your diagnosis.
Yeah. Obviously, it starts in school. Obviously, in school, like you mentioned, I was never cheeky to teachers or nasty to people, but I just couldn't concentrate in the classroom. I was very much distracted. I wasn't interested in the subjects being taught, unfortunately. So in school, obviously in the 80s, you do tend to have a different punishment back then. And it was like that, you're in this situation where you want to get out of that situation. It's overwhelming. So I would actually play up to get out of the classroom environment. I would, and obviously have that thing. So like you said, I've had it all my life without knowing. But talking about the diagnosis, it was actually, my wife went through a traumatic birth, which I witnessed. And my wife had severe post-depression. We know it's more PTSD at the birth at the time. And from that moment, really, I was managing my ADHD as best I could. But the lack of sleep, looking after her, what I witnessed, what I went through as a new father as well. Yeah. And, I still struggled on. And it wasn't until I had a breakdown years later that I was actually signposted to, community mental health teams in Wales, So, and then that's where the diagnosis later come on then.
Right, okay. So it was so mental health issues kind of triggered this investigating a little bit more into what the difference was and stuff like that. So how come it went down the route of ADHD then, rather than just looking at kind of the depression and anxiety angle?
Yeah, I was lucky. I had a really good psychiatrist, Dr. Davis, and he was absolutely incredible. He was, he was actually looking at me before I went into the interview, whatever you want to call it. And my wife was there, Michelle, and she was sitting down. I was looking everywhere, and then when I sat down, he said, "Look, it's a 2.5-hour assessment. We're going to talk back from when childhood right up to the present time."
Yeah,
and I told my wife stuff that the night before that may not have told her in our marriage, and also when we got together, and what happened in my childhood and different things. So I was very honest from start. I wanted to get out because I like I said, I knew it was some more than just the anxiety and depression, which I was diagnosed with later on.
Yeah.
I've had obviously anxiety as a child growing up and different things for school and different things, but not depression and severe depression like I had, and thoughts of suicide, and never made a plan to take my life after having been a new dad, I should say, as well. So it really escalated from that point then.
Right. Okay. So do you know which of the forms of ADHD that you have? Because there's some people may not be aware that ADHD obviously has a few different varieties to it. So one form of the labels is hit, pit, and then mixed. I don't know whether you know those terms. Yeah. So just to explain that to people watching, so you've got predominantly inattentive type, so individuals who struggle to focus, pay attention, easily distracted, may flip between different things, okay? And then you've got the hit, which is hyperactive, impulsive type, which is the individuals who can't necessarily inhibit themselves from what they think is what they do, that kind of idea, and then they act on it a little bit and may struggle to settle or sit still, or even struggle with sleep patterns and things like that around that. And then you've got the mixed diagnosis, which is a combination of both. So do you know which of those it is?
I know it's a mixture of both, but I was actually diagnosed by the psychiatrist. So I actually, after when I got diagnosed, because I'll tell you a little bit how I wasn't diagnosed later on and etc. Yeah. But I was actually at an ASD nurse as well. Right. And she was actually incredible. She knew all about the ADHD. The psychiatrist had good understanding, but Pam was absolutely amazing. Right. But I have, mixture. I would say a mixture of both, but I was just diagnosed with ADHD.
Right. So it's just a blanket diagnosis.
Blanket diagnosis,
Enough of the both attributes in there to kind of know,
yeah, definitely, yeah. So, everything you just said, I understand it.
I've just labelled you.
Yeah.
So as far as the... well, if we look at the two sides of them then, so we'll kind of take them separately, because I think obviously there will be people out there who may have a child. Obviously, I think predominantly ADHD diagnosis tends to be more common in boys than girls, but there seems to be some evidence that boys tend to experience the hit type more and girls maybe more the pit type more. So for girls, it may be slightly that higher level of, or they may struggle with inattentiveness, but you don't get the same levels of hyperactivity and impulsivity that are often associated with, and I put it in inverted commas, naughty behavior. Yeah. Whereas you get the lads who tend to be that hyperactive, impulsive, and they're the ones that then, hey, I can climb that tree, and they're up it before they've even thought about it, kind of thing.
Yeah, that is exactly me as a kid. Yeah, defintelling. And still now.
It's still now, is it? Yeah. Yeah. Still up trees regularly.
Yeah.
I'm at that stage now. It looks too scary for me. So, aspects of inattentiveness wise, kind of what do you find on a day-to-day basis? What do you struggle with, and things around just the kind of the pit side, so the predominantly inattentive side of things?
Yeah, it's like I said, my way of learning is different. I've learned how to contain that information. That makes sense. Yeah. Like I said, sometimes I could be easily distracted, as mentioned. I could be doing something and suddenly all of a sudden over here sort of thing. I think what I've learned, what's worth me is even like, for instance, with dyslexia, I'll talk about later on. How somebody might say a question to me, I can't interpret the question, but I know the answer. So that's more other things. With attention, I could have loads of different projects made, You know what I mean? And if it doesn't stimulate me, obviously, sometimes, you know, I can get bored and, you know, cut and do something else. So yeah, I don't think I asked the question right, Dan. It's a case of like, I would dictate, you know, I need that stimulation all the time. Like, you know, it's like, I suppose like a dog, you know, check me a ball, you know, I need it, you know, some sort of excitement out of it as well. But
Yeah.
I can do, once I do interest and I do hyper-focus, I can really focus into that subject. And the benefits, and that's something with the benefits of ADHD, that when you do hyper-focus and you're really passionate with something, you can actually look at things out of the box that other people may not see as well, you know, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well.
I think I personally kind of feel that ADHD is misnamed slightly, because I don't think it is an attention deficit. It's an attention dysregulation.
Yeah.
So I think that's a better description, because as you just mentioned there, you've got that kind of hyper focus on certain things in your life that when you find something interesting, it's probably to a certain extent all consuming. There's a case of you can't stop thinking about that.
Yeah. And it's on your mind all the time. You know, you're like to the point where, you know, that can cause sleep deprivation as well. You know, it's just niggling at your mind all the time. You just can't get, you know. So you're right, yeah. Overtalk is one, sorry, Andy, as well. So when you're passionate with something as well, you know.
Fairly confident be able to manage him. I'll just shut you down every now and again. We'll be fine. But yeah, that's it. It's that single-mindedness, isn't it? So it's not that you can't focus on things, it's you maybe can't choose what you pay attention to. So, but if something fulfills that natural dopamine requirement because it's something that's fun or interesting to you, then that's it. So just to go into a little bit of the kind of the theoretical side of it for people kind of watching. So there's a difference in the ADHD brain and the certain neurochemicals and neurotransmitters that are produced, one of them being dopamine and one of them being noradrenaline. And noradrenaline is the one that predominantly allows us to kind of focus, and dopamine is that novelty seeking, the pleasure receptor kind of thing. And there's differences in the way that dopamine is released. So it means things like delaying gratification become really hard. Not impossible, but you have to work a little bit harder for it. And obviously, correct me if I'm saying anything that's not true for you. Whereas some people might be able to, let's say, I can do this maths homework because I know that I get to do something fun at the end of it. So I can kind of focus on the pleasure I'm gonna get and go through the displeasure I'm doing at the moment to delay gratification. Whereas and that delayed kind of ability to kind of know the dopamine's coming, I'm going to get something nice in a bit, means you can do something that's not enjoyable to then know that you're going to be able to do something enjoyable afterwards. And I think the kind of the perception I get from the ADHD is, why would I do something if I feel no positive towards it? I can't focus on this right now because I'm not getting that dopamine receptor, the dopamine release for the thing I might get in the future. Until I do that thing that's fun, until I do the thing that's novel, I'm not going to get that dopamine. So that why would I go through something that I only see the pain rather than any potential pleasure? Does that kind of...
Yeah, you're right. And when you look at some of the research, obviously there can be a lack of efficiency in dopamine with some people with ADHD as well.
Yeah.
And look at, my childhood as well, like for instance, and obviously, sport was a big thing for me. So, I'd train in sometimes, I'd go for the training. I get some training sessions I would get bored at, and my coach used to work around that, around me, what I enjoyed. And then I knew at the end of the day, I'd play on that Saturday if I worked hard. Yeah. And that's where I get that buzz, on the Saturday afternoon or whatever sport I was in, like for instance, as well. So, and that goes with the, writing the book, whatever, the tedious bits, things like I struggle with, and then I get somebody to help me, the doctor I work with, and then the exciting part, we publish it. So I know as an end product to all the pain and suffering sometimes that comes with it.
Yeah, and that's it. But you find those little strategies to kind of overcome, that you can hold on to that. And then that's probably maturity that kind of helps with that a little bit. Obviously, we're all a little bit more impulsive or a little bit more inattentive when we're younger. So as we get older, we develop those strategies and kind of workarounds. It's quite interesting you mentioned as far as, were you diagnosed with dyslexia when you were a child then?
No. I went to speech therapy. I had problems with my speech. And to think I'm a public speaker now is, so I used to talk very fast, and mumbling. So dyslexia, like I said, it was only coming later on really. But I my spelling, like I said, I thought, I'd be honest with you, years ago, it was like words popping out, which that wasn't the case for me,
Yeah.
I'd read a book I didn't read my first book until I was 22. And that was Chicken Soup for Soul. And I was in sales and marketing then, motivational books, which I really grasped me.
Yeah.
And so I just read that. I was so fascinated by it. And so going back in school, for instance, Peter and Jane books, those books, picture books, but it was picked up reading classes. I went to special classes, as they were called then. And but no diagnosis of dyslexia in the 80s, nothing. No. So
right, okay.
But they obviously
you mentioned it in there, and I didn't know whether that had been the challenges you'd had at school and stuff that you found out it had been labelled with probably the only label they had at that particular time. Whether that's the case, because there wasn't many other neurodiverse conditions that were kind of recognised or understood back then. So it's a case of, if you got dyslexia, you were lucky.
And I think in the 80s, especially in the UK, it was only, I think it was, somebody said it was like 40 children actually diagnosed in the 80s with ADHD. So it's very new coming in the 80s, etc. So, obviously when I got the diagnosis and dyslexia, as you mentioned earlier on, it is interlinked with other things, I'm doing it now because I'm thinking about it. Sometimes I'll have a tick in my nose. I used to stretch my neck. Links in school and
Tourette's and ADHD have quite a strong correlator to them, don't they, as far as the and again, Tourette's is one of those massively misunderstood conditions that obviously most people think it's all the kind of the swearing and the inappropriate language, but it is predominantly it's the tics and I think there's a real strong correlation between the ADHD and the tics that you get. 100%. So as far as the ADHD, as far as the inattentive side, I think it's quite, as you mentioned there, it's quite worthwhile kind of thinking. You've written 3 books, so you can't say, well, he struggles to pay attention. And they say, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, and you find kind of methods around it. But I think part of one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on as far as the podcast is concerned, I think there's many parents out there that their children may get a diagnosis of ADHD, and obviously with all your attributes and things like that, you've done very well for yourself. And I think it's worthwhile kind of looking at the benefits of it. And I know I have certain traits. I think everything's a spectrum, and therefore, I do similar things. I flit. I've had comments before where people go, "No, you don't seem to pay attention. You're constantly flitting between different stuff." But then there's things I'm interested in that I've got way further than most people have. So I was kind of referred to, I flitted around a little bit, but I've got 4 black belts in 4 different martial arts, and to be able to get a black belt in a martial art takes persistence and continuous dedication and perseverance and effort. So I don't flit that much.
But,
you know what I mean? But that martial arts is just something that interests me, and the same with my company and the training and stuff. I think when I found stuff that really interesting, so there is an aspect that everybody finds it easier to pay attention to things they find fun, and harder to pay attention to things they don't. I think it's the extremeness of that maybe separates ADHD from other conditions. 100%. There's a wonderful analogy, and I'd be interested to kind of hear your, we might have shared it before actually, but I really like it as a way of helping to understand maybe the inattentiveness, which is the bingo machine analogy. Do you know that one?
No.
Okay. So the way I put it across to people is the ADHD brain is like a bingo machine, that all the balls are in there. You just can't choose when a ball comes out. So you can be watching it, it's done that, see 23 and it's on your list, you go, come on 23, but no matter what, you can't force it to come out. So all the ideas, all the thoughts are in there. It's not anything to do with a lack of intelligence. It's not really an inability with memory as such. It's this ability to recall almost. It's an ability to pay attention to what you need to in the moment. So I use it like all of us have walked into a room and forgotten why we walked in there before. Okay, so everybody's done it. There's no diagnosis necessary where you walk in, and some people, it's like the I think there was a comedian who did a joke that a lot of us will walk around looking for scissors, doing this movement, trying to remember what we're looking for, trying to go, what is it? What am I looking for? As reminders. And so most of us walk in a room, we go, what did I come in here for? And then you keep with an internal narrative going, I came in here for something. What was I looking for? What was I doing? And you're kind of talking to yourself all the way through the process. of kind of going, oh, well, I need the loo. That's not why I came up here, but I'll go to the door, I'll come back, and you're looking for clues. Then halfway down the stairs, the bingo ball then returns, and you then go back up and grab whatever it was wanted. And I think one of the theories that came out around ADHD, and it'd be interesting to see if this is your experience, is that individuals with ADHD don't seem to have the same internal narrative. They don't necessarily think in words in the same way that others. And there was an experiment that kind of did this. How does that sound to you? Does that sound?
Yeah. Like you said, you're right. Sometimes, something will pop in my head. Forgetfulness is a thing, I'll give an example. My wife will say to me, Mark, go down and get a pint of milk. I'll come back with everything bar the milk. I talked 2 hours to somebody down there. So time's gone out the window. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot the milk. So it's just like the intention's there to get the milk, obviously. But but sometimes I could be doing something, and a thought will come in my head, and then it just trigger that what I should be doing, like for instance.
And I think a behaviour like that, as an adult, it's one of those things that's just kind of accepted, and Mark's a bit forgetful and stuff. But you can quite easily understand why, for some parents, that may be perceived as, from a child, a disobedient or a naughty behaviour, because in the case of, I sent you for one thing and you've ended up not doing that one thing I sent you for, you've done loads of other stuff, and then you're 2 hours later than you should have been. And that's the difference, isn't it? That the kind of the expectations of the parent make a difference of whether that's a good or a bad behavior. Nothing to do whether it's understanding, well, that's the way their brain works, they don't do it purposefully and stuff like that. So I always use an example like, go and put your shoes and socks on. How many tasks you've just given a person? And most people say 2, but I then start to break it down to them into individual brain functions. And you're looking at over 100 billion individual kind of things like abstract thinking, planning, judgment, making connections between what's the weather like and what am I wearing to what shoes and what socks I want, and memory of where the items are in the household, but also the order. You said shoes and socks, and that's the order I'm going to go and do it in, rather than socks and shoes. So then you've got a kid who's got one sock on, and they're now doing something else because that bingo ball was holding on to, and then suddenly it's gone, and they're now getting told off because I told you to do one thing, and it's like, no, you didn't. You told them to over 100 billion, and they've managed about 25,000 of those. They've done pretty well, and I think that's quite important to get people to shift those expectations. Maybe if you just go and grab your socks out of the drawer, step 1. Don't worry about all the rest, and then go, right, let's put those socks on now. Fantastic. Let's get your shoes ready, and break it down into small, manageable chunks. Is that something you kind of use yourself?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you're right. I think I break the goal now. I use, like, I got strategies. Obviously, I put on pen and paper what I got to do for the day. It doesn't work too well all the time. Like an invoice, people think, oh, that's easy, an invoice. You just done the work, and it's so tedious. And I'm just I'm just got to do that invoice and shut everything off. It took me today about 5 minutes just to copy and paste something. But to me, that's been forgotten about, build up. I'll do that again, sort of thing. But going back, we just said as well, I could be walking around the room, and then putting clothes away. I can, I'll just put them on a pile, and then my intention is to put the clothes away. But I'm distracted down there, and my wife Michelle would say, "Oh, you want to put the clothes away?" Okay, God, that sort of thing.
I started.
Yeah, I started it. But the effort that sometimes, I know it sounds really, to put the clothes away. I rather do the bigger things, other things, than actually put the clothes in the drawer, because I know I'm going to be there for like 10 minutes, whatever. And, and put them in different drawers and different things. It's really, it's overwhelming sometimes, just thinking about it sometimes, Whereas people say to me, Mark, you can do all this, but Michelle would say you can do it. You can do all what people can't do, like get on the stage or do all the other things I've done and talk to people or different things like that. But you can't put the clothes away, So I think there's a lot of benefits to ADHD, what I know now, massively as well. But it's still a struggle. Obviously, days, I'm not going to lie to you, Andy. There's days where I just so overwhelmed. I'm just going to, shut the door, can't talk to anyone, and that's when I'm okay with that as well. I've learned I'm okay, and I know to limit those those work or whatever that is as well.
Yeah. So is it a case of depending on whether it be tiredness or whether it be illness or anything like that, do you kind of adjust almost a kind of a priority list in your head of kind of, these are the things that I have to get done, these are the things that aren't so important, so I'm going to switch all of that off for now because I know that my threshold is lower? Do you have kind of a way that you monitor your threshold and then how you kind of enact or act out based on that, if that makes sense?
No, definitely. Like I said, I structure is a big factor for me. I need structure. So, I'm just taking this job now, not because obviously the money side of it all is, I love what I do. I love it. Get up in the morning, go to work, get home. Whereas when I'm in the house all day, the boredom really starts creeping in. I get really restlessness. What am I going to do? It's like, and you mentioned about kickboxing, obviously, when I was obviously doing sports, the energy would go into that, and then but I think when work-wise, especially working from home, sometimes I'm just walking around and I'm a day like, you feel a wasted day sometimes. You feel like, oh, I should have done, I didn't do as much as I should. You're overthinking a lot of things, and I was going to show you somewhere. I got a book here. I always keep the old diaries here. Old diaries. I need a book. I need like a strategy as well. So I'm really important that even things that trigger small things that because I used to, my mood would change, and I'll get to the top, I'm really excited, and then that comes down then obviously, and then it's something that I'm still learning. I'm always learning different things as well all the time, but I certainly know now about like time anxiety we don't talk about. I have to be on time, got to be there, and Michelle is always late, so that can cause conflict, as well. And but time anxiety is something that we don't talk about, and something I have, it's something whether that relates to whatever in school, or I'm not sure, but I have to be on time. I have to be there, got to be there, can't. So it's things that I would just put it properly. See, that's the thing. My mind's racing over here.
Yeah, I can hear it.
And I go off on tangent, Sometimes I might be talking with you about something, I'll be talking about pizza later, So, but
it's a bingo balls.
Yeah, bingo
out.
Yeah, so it's not, it's trying to get a structure of talk and different things sometimes.
There's I love analogies and stuff, and it's kind of how I retain and remember a lot of information. And there's another one that this was most of the analogies that I've got that I think work really well are from people with ADHD, and it's one was that most of us are kind of driving around town in a station wagon, and we see a sign and we slow down and we start making the turn signals and we turn into it. But when you have ADHD, unfortunately, you're driving in that same town centre, but in an F1 motor car. And therefore, it's case of, there's a turning, but it's like 5 foot behind you, and it's kind of gone at that point. So it's kind of the brain is working quicker than the actions and stuff like that can do. Is that kind of feel that?
Absolutely. My mind's racing all the time, and that's one reason why I took this job, because I'm from home today. I like to talk to people, and Michelle is like, I gotta tell you this, gotta tell you that, and I'm really excitable in the mornings. I'm really hyperactive. My mind does get tired as the day goes on, and I was a little sleep. And then I'm back up again, and that's something or lazy, can't get what it come across sometimes. Not lazy, but it's just my mind's race. I need that just break, and then that works as well. What I think you mentioned something about obviously I'll tell you a bit about my childhood. Obviously, I had a wonderful family, still have. Everything's great. As I said, our parents parents. Big stigma around, it must be the parents, that sort of thing. But my parents are absolutely amazing. I think one thing I've learned, obviously, the education system, as sometimes it's not geared up, for people with neurodiversity. I don't blame the teachers at all, but imposter syndrome can kick in there. Especially the work I'm doing now, where if you've got a teacher saying you're not going to do that in your life, and you never get a job. And I question that, because I had a job and I just become a British champion, and he's telling me I would never do anything in my life. So I think those benefits really give me the fire as well, to inspire other people to say, look, if you have got ADHD or, its benefits, you do fit in somewhere, and especially in the education system, as well, it's a case of like, I think it'll be a better understanding as time goes on as well.
Yeah.
I think, but sometimes it's finding out what you're interested in, very person-centered approach, and that's the way forward, really, as well.
100%, yeah. I think there's another aspect as well that I've been doing a lot of teaching, and we just did last month, we did our podcasts on sensory processing disorder, and there is some crossover. Many individuals with ADHD also experience some sensory processing issues. But one of the things that I talk about when I'm teaching around that is we're not evolved to live indoors as much as we do. In so much as sitting for long periods of time in a chair, which requires actually more balance work than walking around does. With artificial lights and overstimulating environments, because it's not everything at a distance, everything's kind of close in, and the noise bouncing off the wall. So it's quite overly stimulating. And I think there is an element of that, isn't there, with the kind of novelty seeking that once upon a time, I think a kid who had, slightly hyperactive and impulsive kind of tendencies would have been running around in the street, playground, wherever it was, burning off all that kind of adrenaline and energy and stuff. But I think there's such an infringement of and a fear of children getting hurt, for instance. Obviously, I'd never want children to get hurt. But I think that limitations on being able to just get rid of some of that energy and that impulsivity a little bit. There was an interesting article I read years ago. I read this article, so I won't be able to cite it or remember it, but it was a New Zealand school that decided they weren't going to cordon off this construction area where they were having an extension built on the school or something like that. And they thought usually they'd cordon it all off, but they didn't. And they didn't inhibit the children from kind of running around in it and playing in it and playing in the sand and climbing over things and stuff. And obviously health and safety would kind of go, no, risk averse. But actually they found when they did this that the number of accidents went down, because the children were starting to learn to risk assess themselves very quickly and watch out for each other and stuff like that. But the big thing was they found that productivity improved and attention improved, because suddenly they were getting the novelty seeking in that period of time where they were kind of engaging in the outdoor world, and they were getting to burn off some adrenaline, and there was less limitations. So then they felt freer and a little bit more like getting in sync with themselves, if that makes sense, to kind of do that.
Yeah. No, you're right. I just come up with Denmark a couple of weeks ago, doing something out there, talking and scanning Sweden, and I was like, how are they teaching out there, and the kids are free, and it really, that early years stuff, what they do out there. I was just open. I was like, gosh, we got fences, we got all sorts of things in this country, and and it was really open, sort of thing. So yeah, I can relate to that. All about that. It's a good, really good. It's probably the most talked, viewed, I should say, TEDx talk called Sir Ken Robinson. He was a school educator,
right?
And he talks about about the creativity that schools should apply to schooling as well. Yeah, and explains about a lady who wasn't diagnosed with ADHD back then, but she was labelled as destructive and all that stuff, and she went on to produce cats and all that for. Theatre. So yeah, it's a Ken Robinson TEDx talk. It's the most viewed TEDx talk, and he's a school educator. Passed away now, unfortunately, but he explains about we need creativity in schools as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's I've read quite a lot of work, and I can't remember the author, but around the kind of the growth mindset as well, where it's not you never praise the outcome or the child, you only ever praise the process. So that, even if they draw a butterfly and it looks rubbish, you find the one bit where they maybe thought outside the box. Maybe they drew the wings extra large or something like that. And rather than going, oh, it doesn't look like a real butterfly, you're going, I love how you managed to accentuate the wings there and make them so big and bright and bold. Because that leads into that creativity thing that you mentioned there, that it may be a thinking outside the box thing. It may be, well, why would I want to draw a boring old butterfly? I want to draw this something a little bit more
more
extravagant. And certainly that's building their self-esteem because they've succeeded rather than failed. But it also allows them to kind of, well, I work to my strength. I lead into my abilities, which is to think outside the box or do something novel or do something different. And I think that's the thing that would benefit as well. But that's getting on the soapbox around the education system.
Yeah, I know exactly. And like you said, I don't blame anyone. It is what it was. But then, I look at the post-traumatic growth now. Everything I've gone through, I won't be doing what I've gone through in, everything. Things like everything I've done, my work is related to my experiences as well. Now, with this ADHD learning. I'm actually doing my teaching now. I'm doing my level 4 teaching or education and thing. Mm-hmm. So it's a couple of things. I'm going more coaching eventually and different things. So everything. If I hadn't gone through all the things I did in my life, I won't be where I, doing what I love doing today. And I think that's something to be aware of as well. I'm more better when I'm self-employed. If I'm honest with you, if I'm more like free to do. I mean, more creative as well. Sometimes I love my job, but sometimes environments, negativity, I can pick up. I'm very hypersensitive on certain things as well, so I can pick up on people's feelings sometimes which can make good counselors, I've been told as well. So these things I didn't realize until I started looking into it more,
I want to chat to you about one of the things you kind of mentioned in there. So you said structure is very important to you. And obviously that's something I promote when I'm teaching about ADHD and stuff, that although many kids with ADHD always find it difficult to necessarily keep to a structure, they really value and benefit from them. What do you think it is? Do you know why you find structure kind of easier to manage?
I just think that it's like this white space, or whatever you want to call it. It's space, and I just, what am I going to do today? Whereas, like, if I get up, gym equals healthier foods, eat better, and work, do my work, and then I got, it's like I block it off. Like, for instance, it doesn't seem so overwhelming, rather than, so in my mind, it's like, okay, go gym, eat healthy, walk, whatever, mindfulness, whatever that is, and then I call it a bubble. I don't know if anyone uses the actual, I'm not sure. I bubble it up. So basically I say, okay, gym, exercise, wellness, whatever it is that looks like, work, my job, whatever that is. And then the other bubble would be like my family life, interaction with friends and family, also. So I bubble it up rather than just look at, I'm going to do this, do this, do that, do that, do that, do this, which is like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
So I use like a vision board, which works for me as well. A vision board, so it gets me out of my head. I write things down, get me out of my head. So, things that I've developed from even strategies from my sales background years ago when I started, I still use now. When it comes to structured goal setting, it's like a marathon. When I did a marathon 20 years ago, didn't think it was 26 miles. I think it a mile 26 times, sort of thing. So I really break those goals down to achieve it. So, and I got like monthly goals. Don't work for everyone, and that's something to be aware of. As with ADHD, what works for me might not work for that person as well. But strategies that's work. But I do need structure. When I'm out the structure, I'm all over the place, sort of thing as well.
Yeah. I suppose a little bit kind of if you take any typical task, if we go back to the shoes and socks example, that most people would perceive that as two tasks, whereas actually somebody with ADHD suddenly sees that as like, guys, this and this and this and this and this and this. And I've heard other people with ADHD describe it that you feel you've got two tasks, they break it down into almost 1,000. And that's why kind of getting started on a task is sometimes the hardest part, because most of us think start at the beginning, but now because you created 1,000, there's a lot of, and it's not in a kind of a linear fashion. So I always compare it to, I should imagine it's like when you look in your garage and go, I need to tidy it, but it's such a mess. So you're like, I don't even know where to start. And it's kind of how their brain feels a little bit. So I suppose by breaking certain tasks, and if we take it around to the basic level, like kind of getting ready for school, that it's then step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, maybe that shrinks down the amount of work. So it's like going into the garage and going, okay, well, let's just get all the stuff off the floor and clear the floor first and get it outside, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do this. So you're breaking it down into those kind of micro structures to mean you don't have then 1,000 tasks. You're breaking it down into 10 by chunking it, so to speak.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of a similar way you do it.
Yeah, exactly the same. And like you said, you know, you're right. It's like the socks, you know, to me, or whatever it is upstairs. It's like, okay, where have I put the socks? Where this?
Yeah.
You know, and then I'm over there, sort of thing. And exactly what you just said. Actually, it's mind reading me. But it is good, you know, relationships and all that. You know, for years without getting that diagnosed. You know, Michelle obviously now she understands it. She's learned about herself. My wife works in mental health. She didn't know it like myself back then, but ADHD. And you know, so it makes sense as well. Like, you know, there is, as you know, you can have a dual diagnosis and all of it, but it is elements. When I look at my uncle, my grandfather's, my mother's side, some of my cousins actually got diagnosed with ADHD now as well. So, you know, they say it could be genetics and other factors, and stress, and you know, work I'm doing now and different things. But yeah, so there's other factors. So it just all made sense looking back then, you know. And when people say, like you said, why do you need it? I wasn't the point I needed a diagnosis. I knew it was like a visible enemy. I knew it was just anxiety. It was something else that was totally different to my friends. You know, I was the first one to jump in a Tesco trolley or whatever it was. I was the first one to, you know, climb up. And then obviously when I left the youth club, which had a structure, to go into youth club in 1990. Then I went to work, but then obviously the rave scenes and all that stuff come in. So there was a lot of obviously recreation, drugs and different things back. Well, it still is now, but you know, I went down a totally different path, totally different path. You know, then. So you know, it's all these things. When I had the diagnosis, and when I had a good ASD nurse, they were saying it's very, you know, it's high risk. You are high risk, and even high risk of suicide. And other factors as well. So it's really important to get a diagnosis, I feel. You go through this stage as well, where you feel angry at first, and then you feel relief, and then because I was like, well, okay, why wasn't it picked up? Would my life be better? And then you go for this other stage, and I'm so glad I got a diagnosis. People understand me better. People who will relate. Looking back after that time period, you know, gosh, I'm not embarrassed or shamed, you know, and I think if it wasn't for what I did, I wouldn't, you know, like I said, Andy, I traveled the world. I've just given up my job. I think jobs was another factor. I was changing jobs constantly, especially in sales. I had a freedom, you know, I get to what I want to do, and then I change my job, and people say, you always change your job. Well, you know, boredom. And then I'd give up my job and go traveling, and people say, "Oh, well, you give up a good job and go traveling." And yeah, but I couldn't. Why would I want to be in a job I don't like? And then I want to go traveling. You know, why? You know, people say to me, you know, why you give up? You know, you got a job for life, yeah? And I might add, well, I don't want to stay here for life. You know, I want to go try. You know, that's the exciting part. I don't want, you know, that's the thing. So it's like black and white to me, if I want to say. And it's like, well, hang on, I don't want to do that. You know, so it all made sense in the end. But, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, that's the kind of the impulsivity side of things, isn't it? That novelty-seeking aspect. That I want to do something different. I want some new buzz. What about the hyperactivity side of things? Obviously, you said there that you mentioned sometimes your brain kicks in when it's bedtime. I get that 100%. I've been there as well. That's the point. It's always worse. The brain kicks in at night. Not enough distractions. But is there other areas around hyperactivity that you've found for yourself? Do you always have to be on the move, or? Do
you know, I bet since lockdown, to be honest, and I never seen a box set until lockdown happened, because I'll be honest, like I said, when everything went face to face, as you know, training went and different things. I had all this time, and I really struggled. So I had to go back to my psychiatrist, different psychiatrists, and about the meds and different things. I was really struggled because it's like I had a structure. I was off. I was everywhere.
Yeah, then I say no structure at that point, isn't it?
And everything just stopped in it, and I was in the house for, you know what I mean? And I did struggle at first, like a lot of people did, you know. Then I was starting to put out different strategies, like painting, you know, do different things I hadn't done before. Chess is absolutely, I love chess. I think with chess, with board games, it's a good strategy for people with ADHD, because with Monopoly, when we play Monopoly, I say, oh, come on, yeah, my go. Like in my mind. Whereas chess, you're sitting there and you're thinking the next move.
Yeah.
So you're always playing the game, so I'm not waiting. And that's the thing. So stress plays so much chess during lockdown, massively with my wife. My wife started as well. So I then quizzes, different things. But I think, sorry, that's another thing. Andy, what was I going to say? I got off the subject again. Sorry. You said it with the impulsiveness. Sorry, I remember now. Yeah. So yeah, the hyperactivity in the morning.
Yep.
Is really high in the morning, can be. And then, like you said, as days goes on, you know, I just had a 5.5 hour nap now. Then I'm right again. And then I think as time goes on, for me personally, you know, if it's something excitable on TV or something like that, I'm like, oh, I gotta do that, I'm gonna do that. And you know, so it depends on the environment sometimes and what I'm watching or where it's as well. But I think, you know, I could drink coffee at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
You know, 11, I could be sleeping as well.
Right.
You know, I think sometimes the transmitters are different as well. You know,
definitely.
You know,
yeah. One thing I did want to kind of mention, it was something you referred to. You said that sometimes you reach that threshold where you know, I'm done. I need to switch off a little bit and stuff. And I don't know what. There's a spoon analogy which is used usually for individuals with autism, but I'm thinking that might apply a little bit. That the analogy goes that all of us get kind of 20 spoonfuls of energy per day, and basically you kind of, depending on how many tasks and what's going on, can all use those energies. So, you know, if even just getting ready for work in the morning, for instance, could be one spoonful. Then dealing with a phone call that, you know, you've got to think about or plan, like this podcast, for instance, it could be then that's 2 or 3 spoonfuls because it requires a bit of thought and forethought and organization and stuff. So you can sometimes borrow a spoonful or 2 from tomorrow or pass them on from the day before and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you have that threshold that sometimes if you're running out of that energy, if you're doing too much, then you have to kind of, or you run into a deficit because you've been using loads of additional days spoonfuls. You have to have that recharge self-care kind of thing. And I think that's a lovely analogy.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a really nice way of looking at it, isn't it? This threshold of energy that all of us have, and you can borrow bits and you can kind of take bits, but you have to refill. You have to kind of, or cut down a little bit. You know, if you had to use 25 spoonfuls of energy yesterday, then you know, right, I really only should be doing 15 spoonfuls today. Because
yeah, no, I love that. No, it's right. And that's something I haven't thought of good before. So that's great.
Yeah, it's a nice way of looking at it, isn't it? So you said that you do some kind of, what kind of self-care strategies do you have that work well for you to kind of, to re-energize, if you follow that analogy?
Yeah. I think CBT works for me as well. I think CBT have ever since obviously I had therapy and different things, but when I overthink things a lot, and it might be, I could have spoken to 99 greatest people I've ever met in life, and then there's one person who just said something, I would maybe interpret that maybe the wrong way. I'd overthink about that all day, and that my mood might change, or what I say was it me, you know, I start overthinking it. So CBT works for me in different things, and I've learned strategies well, rather than mind read people as well. I tend to, unless it's real, you know, I don't see it, you know, what the problem is or for me. I even say to people sometimes as well, you know, whereas if I've said anything because of my impulsiveness of it, just give me a ring, you know, if I'm upset or anything. So yeah, it's those sorts of things I've got to realize more. I think obviously exercise is a big thing for me as well. I can tell if I'm not in the gym or if I'm not doing what I should be doing.
Yeah.
It's a big difference for me. Eating healthy as well. You know, I'm all or nothing. I'm either not going to gym or I'm eating right. But the other things, like I said, mindfulness. You know, I do tend not to, I don't do the body scans. I just like I'm doing photography, street photography. So what I realized with photography, I'm thinking about, the next picture as I'm walking along.
Yeah.
Street photography, I should say. So these sort of things I've developed as well. But, work-wise, I think, again, I like the scenario with the spoon. I tend to think, okay, I'll do this today. And is it that important? Can it wait? And I'm really honest with people now. I say, look, it's too much for me.
Yeah.
Or I will come back to you if it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to be, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. And all of a sudden I've got this whole list. And I hate letting people down. And then my mood would change and from thinking I've let somebody down now, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So these are things I've learned that I can't do it all. I'm only one person as well,
Yeah. I was going to say there's a number of different conditions that works really well for. There's a condition called pathological demand avoidance, which is they have a threshold of how many demands they can cope with in a day. It's an anxiety-based disorder associated with the autism spectrum disorder. And one of the things that we do for them is create a kind of a priorities list of a number of demands. And like anything could be a demand, like just getting my socks on is a demand. I have to achieve it. There's an expectation for me to do it. So it's a very similar kind of thing. So you label it with a 1 to 5 priority, 1 being it's not really important at all, and 5 being an absolute must. And then if they're struggling a little bit more, and this is what a caregiver can do on their behalf and support them with, if they know they're tired or they're anxious or they seem to be struggling a little bit more today, you drop all the 1s off. Like they're not important, get rid of them. Not important. You might drop the 2s off as well if you think they're really struggling. So they've only then got the priority 3, 4s and 5s left to do in that day. And I think that's a quite a nice way of approaching kind of, I don't know whether that could be a personal strategy as well, but I think that's definitely something that kind of...
No, I mean, that makes sense. Definitely. I think what I've learned over the years, I've just created these coping skills, and that's something I used to do actually when, if I was in sales, the paperwork was the worst thing, I had to do. So I make sure I get somebody else to do the paperwork for me. And because that paperwork would be on my mind all day.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, I got to do that. So I get it out of the way first.
Yeah.
And then, okay, everything else is straightforward for me, like for instance. But it's funny, I do that. And what I learned, things like I've had to read the blog for somebody today. And so I wrote it. But I said to him, look, at the end of the blog, proofread it, put it like in, as long as you do it, that's fine, sort of thing. So when I'd be write the blog and then I spend, I've got to get it right and all that. I just said, look, this is the blog, so you can be, things like that. I've just, I think as time's gone on, I'm not so critical as I used to. I'm okay with everything now. I think I'm at that space now. I'm like, okay, I'm happy with what I'm doing. I'm happy with that. This is me now. Yeah. And, at the end of the day, as you know, what I used to worry about other people and you never see them again. I think my circle, I got my circle, got my son, my wife, I got my family circle. I got my other circle of colleagues and friends and these people, I obviously I'm very cautious and thing, but my 2 circles are more important is my wife, my son, and my second circle, my mother. I think it's been cut out. My mother phoned me just about then. And my father, and my best friends, all sort of things. So as long as those 2 circles are healthy and maintained and focused on, and the other circle, I'm happy, happy like sort of thing, if that makes sense. I don't spend so much time on the outer circle. Those 2 circles are the most important to me,
Yeah, that's nice a way of looking at it, actually, isn't it? Yeah, going to focus on what's important and the attributes of what you can and can't do and the differences in the way you see the world are just part of your character. They're not the most important things in your world, kind of thing. And those who love you accept you.
Exactly.
You surround yourself with those people and don't worry about the others because one of my favorite quotes, I can't remember who gave it, but I don't accept criticism from anybody I wouldn't accept advice from. And I think that's a good analogy to kind of work off that if I value your opinion, I'll value your opinion on anything. If I don't, I won't. It doesn't matter what you said about me. So,
and I'm very anti-authoritative, as that's why I think the campaigning has the benefits. Where I think sometimes a lot of people are restricted to what they can say to politicians or policy changes, whatever.
Yeah.
Because obviously they're worried about their careers and all that. Where I've been so like, no, this is like black and white again. No, this has to change. So how am I going to make it change? If it's going to affect my workplace, okay, I'll just get a job in Tesco's. Or Sainsbury's and all other good marketplaces, I should say. But like you said, so I'm like very tunnel vision. No, that's going to happen, and I think that's benefit me with the campaigning work where we changed a lot of policies. Mother baby unit is back over where they government didn't want it open. First of all, in 10 years it took, and we got the mother and baby unit back open. So again, I'm very much black and white, really, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think it'd be great to have do another podcast sometime if you're up for it, and focus on the mental health side of things and stuff like that. And obviously that's, I know that's a huge passion of yours and stuff. So it'd be nice to kind of get that included one time. So I'll bear that in mind if you'd be willing to with me.
Like I said, I'm still learning with ADHD more, and as you know, perinatal mental health has always been my since obviously what happened, but I'm learning more. I'm still learning ADHD as well. So it's something that I'm gaining another passion, neurodiversity more now.
Yeah,
as well, which I never thought that a couple of years ago would have. Like so.
Yeah, that's it. You got to diversify. Got to keep it interesting, we? Otherwise, otherwise you forget all about it.
It's gone an hour already.
Yeah, it has. So, yeah, absolutely. It's been an hour.
God, that was quick.
Yeah, that's time distortion for you, isn't it? You're ticking all the boxes. I can diagnose you in this one phone call. One session, mate. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Mark. It's been really enjoyable chatting with you. We're both fast talkers, so I think a lot of people watching this and slowing down the rate of the video.
You'd have to get subtitles on. You'd have to obviously.
Wouldn't keep up, mate. It wouldn't keep
up. Not because I'm Welsh, but it's just
absolutely. So yeah, we rattled through that, but a really nice conversation to have with you, Mark. Really appreciated. And so just a reminder, is there anything that you want to kind of plug, or you'd like to kind of direct people to, or anything?
No. Like I said, if you're struggling, guys, obviously Hub of Hope is a database. Put your postcode in local services in the area you can find, and obviously NHS helplines. ADHD Foundation is a really good organisation to look for as well, for more resourcing and special support and even diagnosis, etc. as well. So.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you so much, Mark.
Excellent.
We'll catch up again soon, but thanks for your time and thanks for being on the podcast.
Brilliant. Thanks, Annie.
Right,
thank you.
Take care, mate. Cheers.
Again.